Chapter 24. Seth should know. The memories are fresh, nauseatingly so. As bad as what happened to me was, what happened that day. What I did. What I was a part of. I shiver, already heading out of my room even as doubts and excuses try to slow me down. I want to say they aren't tempting, that the last thing I want to do is keep secrets from Seth, someone who's taken so much pain and effort just to be a friend to me, but they are tempting. I swallow the doubts, knocking on his door quickly. It takes a moment for the door to creak open, and I wince at the tiredness in Seth's eyes. I could probably have at least waited until morning. Seth opens the door, eyes flicking around in suspicion, but it seems to melt away into simple curiosity when he sees me. I open my mouth to say something, but the words stick in my throat, and sudden fear makes me start shaking hard. I know I'm not thinking straight. I walked right on over here half delirious with sleep and memory, and I hadn't really planned any of this out. Void, I didn't even bother to put on shoes or even change out of my simple nightgown. None of that matters though. The only thing that matters is that Seth knows. Seth says nothing though, his tired eyes quickly waking up as he opens the door wider, gesturing for me to come inside. I walk into the room, fiddling with my fingers as I look around nervously, trying to come up with a plan or at least some way to string together words into a coherent sentence that won't end with Seth being afraid or hating me. His room is much like mine, except, somehow, seems to be even more bare. I don't see any personal effects whatsoever in the main room, and I do my best not to peer into the bedroom, fidgeting awkwardly. Seth closes the door, nodding towards the chair for the desk, and I take a seat. He just moves to the wall, folding his arms and looking at me. "What's wrong?" Seth asks quietly. I consider how I want to tell him. "There was a part of my story I didn't tell you," I say, trailing off slightly. "And you deserve to know who you're working with." "I already know who I'm working with," Seth says, a light smile forming. "Seth," I struggle. "I'm not the person from Fairfax's stories." "Of course you aren't," Seth says, rolling his eyes. "There's more to a person than just a couple stories of what they did or didn't do." "I don't mean it like that," I sigh with frustration. "I mean I'm not a good person." Seth blinks, confusion turning to frustration. "You keep saying that, and I'm starting to run out of ways to say that what they did to you doesn't make you anything." "It's not just about that," I force out, squeezing my eyes shut. "It's about what happened afterwards." I hear him go silent, and I take the moment to build my courage with a breath. And then I tell him. I tell him every gritty detail that was just forced through my mind in my memory dream. I tell him, and I wait for his revulsion. I don't get any. Instead, he just blinks his eyes a few times, processing. Then he shrugs, as if it was no big deal, as if he could somehow accept a murderer and torturer as his friend. He shrugs it off as if I wasn't the monster the Noxians turned me into that night in the alley. "Arya, you aren't perfect," Seth says, scratching his cheek and looking up thoughtfully. "And just because you feel bad about what happened that day doesn't mean it wasn't justified." "I killed a man," I hiss back, and he lets out a snort. "Vice Captain Severin killed a man. But I was a part of it. He did it for me." Seth stares at me for a second, turning more serious the longer he looks. "Arya," Seth says, his voice quiet. "The way I see it, every Noxian there deserved to die, especially the one who betrayed you." I swallow, apprehension and fear suddenly mingling inside me at his cold words. Seth just smiles sadly, giving a shrug. "I'm not perfect either," he says. "And I know my anger gets the better of me more often than not. Crows, I beat a guy half to death because he hurt someone in a duel. I know what it's like to do something regretful, but if there's one thing Fairfax taught me, it's that there is no point agonizing over the past. We can't change what we did, only what we do now." There's a long silence that follows, and I fiddle with my fingers, looking at the stone floor. I wasn't expecting him to be understanding. I thought anger, outrage, or even disappointment would be his response, but instead, he understands. No, more than that, he accepts. "Aren't you angry I didn't tell you this yesterday?" I ask, wrestling with my thoughts. "Why would I be?" he snorts.
What happened to you was none of my business in the first place. I'm here if you want to talk about it, not so you have to.
I let out a breathless laugh, relief and doubt fluttering in my heart.
Thank you,
I managed to say, letting out a deep breath.
For everything.
He shrugs, and I think I see him blush slightly through the darkness.
It's nothing,
he says.
I mean, this is what friends do, right? Tell the other more thick-headed one something over and over again until they accept it, I mean.
I smile at that, and I feel the slightest of twinkles in my eyes.
I guess Noxians don't have a monopoly on being dense, hey?
He smiles, and I notice his gaze lingering on me. I look away, blushing but still smiling.
What? I've just never seen you smile like that before,
Seth says softly.
I've smiled here before. But not like this,
Seth laughs.
It's always been half-hearted or kind of grim. This. You should smile like this more. It looks good on you.
My smile deepens even though I try to stop it, my embarrassment growing. I slowly work the courage to look back up at him, biting my lip softly.
Seth. Could you hold my hand again?
I ask, holding my breath. He smiles, and it melts the darkness inside me as I feel the eyes of someone who actually cares, someone who has no obligation to, something only two kindred souls, two friends, could do.
I would love to.
And so he reaches his hand out. It takes me a few seconds to work up the courage to put my hand in his once again, but when I do, it feels as good as the first time. It's just as warm as I remember, and I savor the feeling, the comfort in another human's touch. I close my eyes, relaxing into the feeling. It feels like humanity, something that I thought I had lost. The tears are warm on my face, but they aren't ones of sorrow.
I still don't get it, you know,
I murmur.
Get what? How any of this can be happening,
I whisper.
How you can accept me for who I am. You keep saying that,
he says with a hint of humor.
Is it because I'm Noxian and you're Ionian? No. Maybe. I don't know. It's just. Why do you want to be my friends so badly? Because if people like us, people who want to change the world for the better, don't start sticking together, then who will?
I feel the barest hint of him squeezing my hand, just gently enough to be comforting to my sensitivity.
I
say, twitching my hand in an attempt at a response.
I guess I forgot that's how normal people make friends, finding people who are like them. Well, I wouldn't go as far to call myself normal, but yeah, that's generally how it works.
I let out a huff of laughter, opening my eyes and looking up at him.
Thank you for reminding me,
I say, drawing my hand away.
Anytime,
he murmurs, letting my hand go. I stand up, smoothing out my nightgown as I do. My fingers still tingle with warmth, sending waves of comfort up my arm.
I guess I should probably go,
I say, heading for the door.
But we should talk about what our next step here at the Academy is. Definitely,
Seth says.
We should have a talk about the others, too. I know you don't trust some of them, but I don't think we have much of a choice. Besides, you and I both know something weird is going on here. Remember that meeting Sadon had in the forest?
I give him a nod, almost forgetting that it was him training with me the whole time and not Fairfax.
There's been other things I've noticed, too,
Seth says, reaching to open the door for me.
Like the soldiers gathering here, the crystal caravan, and the tunnel opening up into the cafeteria. Something doesn't feel.
He trails off as he opens the door, a crack and voices come out from it. He instantly freezes, holding his breath, and I do the same.
Is the third sublevel?
A voice whisper.
The only other stairway besides the one we just came down leads to the summoning rooms below as well as the surface level of the Academy. Is there another way down to the summoning level?
A deep baritone voice asks.
Only one. It's a stairway that skips the third level but otherwise connects the rest of the Academy. It's pretty far from the insertion point, so that's only going to be a backup. The tunnel leading there was just finished yesterday. Anyone suspicious about 2 holes being tunneled into the Academy? Sure, but no one could put it together. Humph. What about the students? Where will they be? They'll be told to stay in their rooms. They should be too busy watching to notice anything. What if they get curious? Then take care of them.
I shiver, looking over at Seth. His face is pale in the shadows, and I see his eyes narrowing as he peers through the crack in the door. I take a step, leaning forward so I can also look through. I glimpse a scarlet-cloaked figure along with another person wearing a somehow familiar-looking black cloak. Both their voices have a tinge of a screeching sound, the mark of someone using poor sound alteration magic. That's when I place the black cloak as the one Sadon usually wears, and my blood chills considerably.
What about your agent?
The Crimson Cloak asks.
Will he succeed? Oh, he has quite the personal interest in doing so,
Sadon laughs.
Besides, even if he weren't convinced this is how to achieve his goals, I've made sure that he won't be thinking clearly when the time comes. You've really thought this through, haven't you? Our benefactor has, yes,
Sadon says.
So you had better not make any mistakes. But of course.
Sadon and the other figure move off, and I give Seth a wide-eyed look, one that he returns.
That was Sadon,
I hiss, and he nods.
And the red cloak? The one in the hallway and all the ones gathering at the academy, they're Noxian special forces of one kind or another.
I swallow, looking back out into the cold hallway, neither of us saying anything.
Yeah,
I finally whisper.
Tomorrow, we're going to talk about what's going on here, because whatever it is, it's big. Fairfax told me there was some kind of announcement happening at breakfast tomorrow, something big,
Seth whispers back, and I find myself nodding.
Good,
I say, unsure if I actually mean that.
It could be the last puzzle piece. We'll figure it out after.
I don't get much sleep after that, my heart beating with each racing suspicion and thought. None of it makes sense, not yet, but I have a very bad feeling that when it does, it's going to connect everything that's been going on here, every oddity and secret. The only thing is, I'm not sure I want to know the truth. Because it's going to be bad, the kind of thing that changes lives. The kind of thing I never wanted to experience again. Dumont stands on top of one of the tables, waiting for the clamor of all the students to die down before he begins speaking. Seth and I stand against one of the walls in the lunchroom, and I feel slightly sick.
Everyone,
Dumont calls out, his ancient voice echoing.
As I'm sure many of you have noticed, there have been some, oddities happening around here.
There's a few chuckles from the students, Dumont's eyes sweeping around the lunchroom slowly. I expect him to pass right over me, but instead, I find him staring at me. I can't help but meet his gaze in surprise, unable to look away.
There's been quite a few weird things,
Dumont says, an undercurrent in his tone, almost as if he's speaking directly to me.
Like the caravan of crystals, the troops gathering here, and even the tunneling that's created 2 holes in the second sublevel. I'm sure, however, what I'm about to say will surprise all of you.
Dumont clears his throat, and the tension grows in the room noticeably.
The reason for the construction was to create artificial ley lines, creating a permanent link with the League's existing framework and establishing a permanent, secure connection. This was done to create a place where official League matches could be hosted, especially one in particular.
My heart drops to my stomach, balance wavering as my head swirls in realization.
Some of you may have heard the rumors of Ionia requesting an early rematch to regain control of the occupied provinces. It is my great pleasure as headmaster here to not only inform you Noxus has accepted the request, but the match will be hosted here in our very own summoning halls down below.
A wall of sound raises from the students, some cries of confusion or outrage, while others merely turn to the people next to them, whispering quickly with each other. Everyone looks surprised and shocked, no one having expected this. My skin of the room stops when I spot Alexander, and I almost choke. Instead of looking confused or angry, he has a grim smile set on his lips, dark eyes smooth as stone. Right past him, leaning against the wall, is Sadon with much the same smile, but I see laughter in his eyes. Dumont raises his hand to silence the crowd, but it takes a while for them to quiet down.
I am sure there is some confusion as to why Noxus allowed such a thing, so allow me to explain,
Dumont says, settling down the students.
Let me make one thing clear first, Noxus was the one to challenge Ionia, not the other way around.
I blink in the stunned silence, barely able to breathe.
After hearing about the Ionian monk's plight, the one who has set himself on fire and continues to burn until Ionia is free,
Dumont continues, waving a hand absently.
Along with the outcry from Ionian officials, Noxus decided to settle this conflict once and for all. Therefore, should Ionia win, they will regain one of the 3 provinces currently under Noxian occupation. However, if Noxus emerges victorious, they will retain permanent control over the 3 provinces and give once elected Noxian designee a seat among the famed Ionian elders.
Pure excitement erupts from the crowd, roars and cheers echoing through the room and shaking me to the bones.
The league match will take place tomorrow night,
Dumont says.
It was kept secret from everyone but the summoners within the league, a geese leveled against them to prevent word spreading to the common folk and keep the proceedings safe from tampering. The extra soldiers are here to ensure nobody interferes whatsoever. So, you will all be confined to your rooms starting tonight and all of tomorrow while the match goes on. Each room will be provided a scrying orb to watch the match on. Of course, all proceedings for the next few days have been cancelled, so enjoy the match.
The crowd cheers again, and I find my entire body shaking uncontrollably.
Seth,
I whisper.
Get Fairfax and meet in my room. How bad is it?
He asks. I swallow.
I don't know yet,
I answer softly.
And if we can't even figure that out?
He looks at me, my stomach swirling with nausea. He tries to look strong and unconcerned, but he's clearly shaken.
We'll figure it out,
Seth nods firmly.
And we'll get through this.
I don't give a response. I'm too busy trying to figure where one scheme ends and another begins. I hope that this is everything, that all their schemes and planning were for the league match, but I know it isn't. Too many things don't make sense, and Noxians never only have one plan. And if something as big as this isn't their main plan? I shiver, the hungry eyes of the Noxians around me growing more ravenous with each second.
It just doesn't make sense,
I say finally with a sigh, sitting back down on my bed.
You're right,
Fairfax says, leaning against the wall.
Noxians may be arrogant, but they aren't stupid. The levels of risk in challenging Ionia far outweigh the benefit. And why would they do it now when they have years to prepare for the match in the future?
I ask.
Could they think they have a better chance of winning now?
Seth asks, pacing around.
A better chance than training a single group of summoners for years to beat Ionians?
I ask skeptically.
All right,
Seth nods.
So the question is why? Why challenge Ionia when there is so much risk? Not only that,
I add.
But there are other things that don't add up. For instance?
Fairfax asks.
Well, first of all, the crystals that were supposedly used to establish a direct link with a ley line running to the League's Institute. Ionia is a conflux of ley lines, so creating a link to any one of them would take barely any at all, and tunneling to a physical location of anyone would be incredibly easy. So the holes in the academy weren't mistakes.
Seth's eyes narrow.
They have another purpose. A purpose that has to do with Sadon and the soldiers,
I chime in, turning to Fairfax.
According to the conversation we told you about, the one we overheard last night. That brings the soldiers and Noxian elites into consideration,
Fairfax mutters.
Like the fact that there's too many here. What do you mean too many?
I ask, frowning.
Doesn't that just mean Dumont is making sure security is tight for the match?
Fairfax shakes his head, finger tapping on the pommel of his sword.
The more combatants and moving pieces, the harder it becomes to communicate and strategize,
he explains.
It adds too much confusion, and if nobody knows what's supposed to be happening, it makes it easy for other things to go unnoticed. So they want confusion for some reason,
I nod.
They want the grounds filled, maybe to hide something. It's more than that,
Fairfax sighs.
I estimate that 90% of the Noxian forces in this province have been relocated here or moved to another base.
My eyes widen.
Why would they risk the security of the province like that?
I gasp.
What if the rebels were to attack? Or a riot broke out? They could lose the entirety of their control here.
There's an unsettling silence as each of us try to think of a reason, but no one says anything.
What about Sadon?
Seth finally suggests.
He has to have a part in it, right? We saw him talking to a Crimson Cloak yesterday. If we add in everything each of us has seen him do,
I thump my hand softly against my knee.
It still doesn't make sense. We saw him in the forest with someone saying the caravan saved their plan a lot of time. I saw him and Dumont arguing about what Sadon and whoever his master is have planned, and he mentioned he had some sort of agent last night. That doesn't amount to much except him and someone else have everything they need for their plan. And the amount of soldiers here will disguise their actions,
Seth finishes, letting out a frustrated sigh.
Couldn't we just ask Dumont what's going on? You made it sound like he genuinely wanted this academy to be for training.
No, I answer.
Dumont said he had to make some sort of deal with Sadon's master to get the academy created in the first place. Whatever deal he made, it didn't sound like he was willing to break it, even if he didn't like the price he had to pay. So we're stuck then?
Seth asks.
We know Sadon and whoever is controlling him are up to something, but we don't know what.
I stare at the floor, thumping my fist against the bed over and over again. There's something I'm missing, a piece that relates, there has to be. I can feel it hiding in the back of my thoughts, the link that will put everything together.
It all comes down to that one question,
I murmur, more to myself than the other two.
Why take such a big?
What if it wasn't a risk because their plan is to eliminate all risks? That thought strikes me hard, and things start falling together with horrifying clarity. Sadon is working for someone with a plan, and Noxians only do things to get power. Noxians always reduce the risk in their plans, so everything that's happened here has happened for a reason that has to do with right now. So, they have a plan that revolves around the league match, the one they pushed to happen early. The amount of soldiers here add to confusion, not safety, so it makes it easier to hide what's actually happening and what people are doing. It creates holes in the security. My heart stops, my breathing disappearing with it. Oh void. The holes in the academy are tunnels that lead to the forest. I saw the digging equipment out there when Sadon caught me that one night. Mass confusion, an easy way inside the middle floors of the academy, the figures talking about having 2 entry points for multiple insertion points, Sadon having a motivated agent. Empty stars.
They're going to rig the league match,
I whisper, head snapping to me.
What?
Seth whispers.
Think about it,
I push.
The only reason to challenge to have the league match now is if there wasn't a risk, if they knew they could win it. Sadon's master, whoever he is, got Dumont this academy built so he would have every blueprint to the building. He would have zero issue getting someone, that agent Sadon mentioned, inside and out ahead of time. Especially if he made tunnels in advance,
Seth says, eyes widening.
And plenty of soldiers to hide the actual threat in plain sight,
I nod, clenching my fists. Fairfax shakes his head slowly, tapping the pommel of his sword thoughtfully.
That doesn't make sense,
Fairfax says slowly.
What would their end plan be then? Storm the match with soldiers if it looks like they are going to lose? The League would know Noxus was behind it and Ionia would be given the victory anyway. Not necessarily,
I interject.
There's no way they would do something so direct as slaughtering the soldiers, especially if you consider all the secrecy and planning that's been going on. No, they have a plan to interfere without being noticed. It's all about Sadon's agent. Whoever they are, they must be the key to their plan. So how do we figure out who it is?
Seth asks.
We don't, because it doesn't matter to us,
I answer firmly, mind spinning.
Look, we know their basic plan now. While everyone is busy watching the league match, if things start to turn bad, they're going to send in their agent along with some select special forces. They'll enter through the tunnels to avoid raising suspicion or getting caught by any rogue security, and then they'll escort the agent down to the summoning level to enact the plan. We can't assume the agent is entering with the others,
Sadon says sternly.
This academy is more than big enough to hide a few soldiers along with the agent. Keeping him inside would make the plan faster, too. So the tunnel is the backup,
I nod.
They'll be entering to make sure if there's any obstructions there's enough force to take care of them. They're not just the backup,
Seth murmurs, his voice dark.
They're the cleanup crew. They're coming in to make sure there is no witnesses or loose ends afterwards. They'll probably kill the agent afterwards, too, just to be sure.
The chill of promised death in Seth's voice makes me shiver, and I look down, biting my lip. I don't have to look at Fairfax to know Seth is right. It makes sense, especially from an Oxian standpoint. If the agent was dead, then no one would be directly linked to the purpose of the plan. Void, the soldiers coming in might even actually think they're taking out threats to the league match. All of this planning, the logistics, and pure creativity is mind-blowing. Whoever planned this isn't some everyday villain. They've looked years into the future to get everything right. This probably isn't even the full scope of their plan, or even half of it for that matter. This is so much bigger than just a simple scheme. This is a conspiracy, one that ends with Noxus in complete control over 3 of the wealthiest provinces in Ionia. Soldiers, elites, special forces, agents, secrets, lies, money, and years of planning are all behind this plan, a plan that ends any dream of Ionian freedom. And there's nothing I can do about it. I have to sit down, but that doesn't even stop the shaking. I'm not scared, no, it isn't fear bleeding out my heart. It's dread. Because I don't know if there's anything that can stop them now. The League wouldn't believe us. An Ionian and 2 Noxians who are legally related talking about some conspiracy? Even if we could make someone believe us before tomorrow night, there's no way the mastermind didn't plan for that contingency. I would be surprised if there wasn't. Money being spent to bribe anyone who could actually do anything on such short notice. So if we can't get the League to stop or even postpone the match,
they're going to get away with it,
I whisper, despair cracking my voice.
No. No, they won't.
I look over at Seth, and I can see the defiance in him. The way he holds himself, the strong set brow, and even the steady eyes all make me want to believe him, but I can't. I can't because no matter how I look at it, Noxus ends up winning, and I become a slave forever.
No one's going to help us,
I whisper, struggling to hold back the emotions.
Just from what we do know, they've thought of everything. This plan. It's too well thought out to not have contingencies. Anything we do, they're going to have years of thought and will against whatever we come up with. What if we find out who the agent is?
Seth says.
We could take them out before tomorrow. Without the agent, they have no way of disrupting the match, right?
I consider his words carefully, clawing my way out of the pit of despair.
Maybe,
I admit finally.
But that's assuming we're right on every account. We have to be,
Seth says fervently.
Nothing else could make sense. We could be missing something,
I shake my head.
We aren't,
Fairfax says with stone-steady confidence.
The League match is the focus of their plan. It's too big of an event not to be, and everything we've seen matches up. There's no such thing as coincidences,
Seth agrees. I let out a frustrated breath, closing my eyes. Maybe. No. They're right. All this time, I've been second-guessing and doubting myself. Every day since last year, I've never trusted anything, especially myself, but if both of them are sure I'm right, I can accept that. I have to.
All right,
I open my eyes with a shaky breath.
So it's up to us. First things first, we need to find the agent. What are we looking for exactly?
Seth asks, a fierce grin on his face.
All we know for sure is that they don't belong here,
I mutter, letting my thoughts guide each word.
The amount of confusion they created is to help hide them, probably because they would be highly noticeable. How could they not be if they have the power to disrupt an entire League match and get away with it? So we'll know them when we see them.
Yes, I answer slowly.
But we can't just go searching for a sword when we're in an armory of sorts. We need to look for places they could be hidden, waiting to enact the plan. If the area's forbidden, how do we check it out?
Seth asks.
I do,
Fairfax answers with a stoic nod.
Right,
I agree.
Seth, what we need to do is get the information for Fairfax. You go and ask as many people as you know about rumors or anything that might be related. I'm going to ask some of our classmates about what they've noticed going on. Fairfax, if you would wait here, whenever Seth or I get information we think might help we'll come back and tell you. All right,
Fairfax says.
If I find the agent, do nothing,
I interrupt.
Not until we can make a plan. They have to have contingencies in place to protect him. This isn't something we can rush.
Fairfax gives a tilt of his head in acknowledgement and approval, and I let out a breath.
All right, let's go save Ionia.
Seth grins and heads for the door with a steady pace. I follow close behind him, trying to slow my heartbeat down so my ribs don't crack.
Arya,
Fairfax says, stopping me.
A moment please.
Seth looks back, but I give him a nod as I turn to face Fairfax once again. Seth closes the door behind him, leaving the two of us alone. It's then that I suddenly remember what I said to Fairfax before, about never wanting to see him again. I feel my cheeks heat up, and I give myself a mental kick. With all the urgency going on, of course I had forgotten.
Fairfax,
I begin, looking up at the ceiling awkwardly.
About what I said.
Fairfax raises a hand to cut me off.
You had every right to say what you did,
Fairfax shrugs.
It was in the heat of the moment,
I sigh, looking down.
I know. I know you've been trying your best, even before you felt indebted to me for letting what happened happen. Especially after. You've tried to do right by me. I've tried,
Fairfax says slowly.
But I've failed. You're too hard on yourself,
I say half-heartedly, memories ripping into me.
I'm not the only one,
Fairfax says, and I let out a breathless laugh. He quirks a smile at that, giving me a nod, and the guilt of what I said to him fades away. I give a thankful smile, nodding back.
What I wanted to tell you,
Fairfax says, pulling a folded piece of paper from one of his pockets,
is that I got a letter from Akira a few days ago. I was holding on to it because I didn't want you to be more distracted with everything that was happening to you, but I'm beginning to suspect things will only grow more hectic from here on out. That's an understatement.
I roll my eyes, taking the letter from him and opening it. Sis. We have a problem. A big one. I followed the advice you gave me last time about Voidborn and magic, and whatever you asked Fairfax to do worked because the guards started opening up to me. And, well, the attacks I've been investigating haven't been Voidborn attacks at all. Every single victim died of sword or magic wounds, not Void-related ones. Whoever killed them summoned Voidborn afterward to hide that fact. Even worse, I know why these groups of Ionians were targeted. They were all rebels. Every one of them. I didn't figure it out sooner because their armor and weapons stashes were missing from the scenes, presumably taken by the murderers. Whoever killed them took everything they would need to masquerade as Ionian rebels, and even worse, I talked to someone in the organization, and he told me whatever's left of the resistance is in hiding or on the run. In other words, all the members who might be willing to fight against Noxus have been eliminated. I don't know who or why they would do this, especially considering they hid what was happening by summoning Voidborn. Even worse, they have to be planning something that the rebels would have fought back against. I need any advice or insight you might have, and if you could get Fairfax to send me a letter at the Guardian HQ in the city as soon as possible, that would be great. I've got a bad feeling, sis. I'm sorry to bother you with such worrying news. Hopefully your training is still going well. I've attached a letter from Zane that he wanted me to send to you for some reason. I didn't read it, but his letter made it pretty clear it was important you read it. I love you, sis. Stay safe. Akira. I frown, unfolding the letter even more until I find the folded piece of paper that must be Zane's message. Something in his letter sets my teeth on edge, pangs of anxiety spiking through me as I shakily open up Zane's letter. It's probably just my nerves about what's going on here combining with Akira's peril, but something tells me it isn't. I get Zane's letter unfolded, and I start reading it on instinct, putting the nerves behind me for now. Arya. I can't believe it. We're so close to being free. Just a few more days and we make it. I was keeping it a surprise, but I guess you should know by now. Just hang in there. I know it isn't easy fighting at the academy, but it's all going to be over soon. And if you're worried about Ionia not winning the league match, well, don't be. I'm sorry, but I lied to you before. I'm not working for a mining company. You were right, I've been working with the rebels, but it's not what you think. We have a plan, and we're going to make sure Ionia doesn't lose, not this time. I'm going to save you, Arya. You have no idea how hard it's been for me, unable to keep you safe, but that ends in a few short days. Just stay strong until then. Afterwards, I'll lead you out of the academy myself, and then we'll really be free. Stay strong, little sis. Zane. My hand starts shaking.
When did you get this letter?
I ask numbly, my very bones trembling.
A few days ago.
Fairfax shrugs.
Why?
If Fairfax got the letter a few days ago, then it had to have been written even before that. Before even I knew about the league match, the one that was supposedly kept under maximum secrecy, and yet, Zane knows. No. There's more than that. My hands are shaking so bad that Zane's letter falls away, and with it comes realization as I stare at Akira's letter in horror, desperately rereading it, hoping I misunderstood something. They were all rebels. Every one of them. If the people really were murdered, not killed by random void-born attacks. In other words, all the members who might be willing to fight against Noxus have been eliminated. Then who are these rebels Zane said he's working with to ensure Ionia's victory? Whoever killed them took everything they would need to masquerade as Ionian rebels. I drop Akira's letter, too, stumbling back against the bed. A loud and shrill sound rings in my ears, my vision blurring with even the slightest movement. I can barely make out Fairfax rushing towards me. His mouth moves as he kneels next to me, but I hear nothing as I stare down at the two letters. Zane said I was fighting. He knows about my training. I never told him. I look up slowly at Fairfax.
That night in the forest,
I whisper, my voice oddly distorted.
When you told Sadon you knew he was sneaking out of the academy every night and would tell Dumont what he was doing. What was Sadon doing? I don't know exactly,
Fairfax says, looking at me with worry.
He would lose me in the city, but I always saw him return with blood on his sword.
My heart sinks, and I close my eyes, steadying myself for a moment.
Go get Seth and the rest of my classmates who might want to help us,
I whisper, holding down the horrified nausea the best I can.
I know who the agent is.
Fairfax slowly looks over to the letters, and then his face pales as he puts everything together.
Sadon said he had a highly motivated agent,
I murmur.
And he was right. Zane will stop at nothing if he thinks he's saving me. No wonder they have so many soldiers here,
I whisper.
They know the rebels won't cause any trouble because Sadon's killed them all.
Fairfax looks back at me slowly, and I see something akin to fear in his eyes.
Can we still stop them? Is there a chance?
I hesitate before I answer, looking down at my hands. My hands. A laugh bubbles inside of me, a hysterical one that escapes as a small, horrified smile. There really is no such thing as coincidences.
Yes,
I answer, looking up finally.
But only because I'm still here. I want to start by thanking you all,
I say, fiddling with my fingers nervously.
What you guys did for me. It meant a lot.
I get smiles from them, Molly, Xander, Devon, and Seth all giving nods from where they sit in the break room. I shuffle a little where I stand in the front of the room. I feel sick enough already, and now.
I know I haven't been easy,
I force myself to continue.
I've been distant, quiet, and even cruel.
I take in a shaky breath, head swimming. I shouldn't manipulate them like this, but what choice do I have if I want to save people? If I want to save my brother?
I realize now we all do have something in common. We all have our reasons for fighting against Noxus. We've all lost something. But I still don't have any right to ask you for what I'm about to.
I close my eyes. I can do this. I have to.
But you need to know what's at stake here,
I say, voice gaining in strength marginally as I go on.
So I'm going to tell you what happens when Noxus gets to do whatever it wants.
One last deep breath. And then I tell them my story. What happened to me, and what I did. I tell them everything. Time blurs together as I talk, and I realize that the hardest part was starting to speak. Once I manage to get the words out, more follow in a rush until they know everything about me, about why I am who I am. About the mark on my back. Seth keeps me going whenever I falter, my fleeting gaze always settling in on his steady presence, a silent nod from him giving me the strength to say the next word. By the time I finish again, though, even he looks pale. He does better than the rest, having heard my story once already, but he's still shaken. I don't blame him. I am too.
Stars,
Molly's voice wobbles.
Arya.
Xander looks sick to his stomach, staring at the floor. Devon has a complete look of indifference on, his eyes flat and cold. The only reason I know he's shaken is by the fact I can see his hand clenched tight enough to turn his knuckles white.
I need your help,
my voice wobbles, breaking more than a few times.
Because if we don't stop them, there are going to be thousands of people like me.
That gets their attention again, and I take a moment to compose myself before I start.
Noxus isn't going to play fair during this league match,
I say sternly.
They have a plan to disrupt the match if they start losing, and if they succeed, the league will side with them either way. That's not possible,
Devon says suddenly, surprising everyone, seemingly even himself as he blinks.
It is,
I insist softly.
Think about it. The mass of soldiers here makes it easy to hide things, the tunnels that break into the academy are the perfect entry points, and Noxus has no reason to challenge Ionia now instead of in a few more years when they've had more time to prepare. Not only that,
Seth interjects.
But Arya and I have both seen Sadon conspiring.
I nod, and explain all the evidence Seth, Fairfax, and I discussed earlier. Soon enough, they all have shocked expressions on their face except for Xander.
No, even with all that, it still doesn't make sense,
Xander says.
This agent can't have a way to disrupt the league match that wouldn't point back at Noxus. No matter what scenario I think of, it just isn't possible to interfere with a league match without getting caught. You would be right,
I concede.
But you're making a mistake. What? You're assuming the agent is Noxian.
Xander opens his mouth to counter, but then stops, eyes narrowing with thought.
Their plan,
I say, my voice shaking,
is to have an Ionian attack the league match just enough to throw the match into doubt. They'll dress him and whatever backup he has as Ionian rebels and make sure his body gets left behind as proof. The league will think it was Ionia that interfered, and... Empty Dawn,
Molly curses in a whisper.
They'll give the win to Noxus. Even if it was just a rebel group, they'll make them an example to show how absolute their power is. Hold on,
Xander says, raising a hand.
Where in the void are they going to get an Ionian to do that for them? They have one,
I say through clenched teeth.
That's been persuaded to think he's doing the right thing. They've manipulated and lied to him, and he thinks this will free the Ionian provinces. Not only that, but... The name of Sadon's agent is Sane Kessler, and my brother thinks he's saving me.
The only sound for a few minutes is my breathing, and I swallow back a few choked sounds, letting them process. Then, I give them the evidence. I tell them about the letters and everything else we know once again. I tell them it all, and then I wait.
Arya,
Molly says slowly.
If you're right about this. Which she is,
Xander interrupts weakly, looking like a ghost.
It all fits. Then how are we supposed to stop them?
Molly finishes, looking at me with searching eyes.
We were going to take out the agent,
Seth says quietly.
Before the match, that is. Stop their plan before it could even begin. Now that we know it's Arya's brother, we can't take him out. The only thing that would stop him is killing him, and that's obviously not an option.
The rest seem to accept that, and I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding.
I have a plan,
I say carefully, looking each of them in the eyes.
It's stupid and risky, and I won't lie, we all might end up dead. The only reason this might work is because I'm still here, and even if we mess up, there's a chance the League will recognize that it was one Ionian stopping another. If I can stop my brother, the League just might believe us when we tell them about the conspiracy. The thing is, if I need more than everyone's help, I need you all to risk your lives, not just for me, but for everyone in occupied Ionia.
I expect some sort of hesitation, a pause maybe, but there isn't one. Molly, Xander, and Devon stand up almost simultaneously giving me nods, and I find myself tearing up.
If it means saving people,
Devon says.
We'll do it,
Molly says.
Because it's time Noxians stopped hurting people because they can,
Xander finishes. I can barely look at them through the tears, but I manage a shaky nod anyway, my heart pounding in pride and fear. Seth told me before I had this meeting that I could trust them all, that even though each had failed me somehow, they were still good people, people like him who wanted to help others. He was right.
All right,
I say firmly.
Let's get started then. If we want to stop their plan, we have to start before the match even begins. If Noxus wins the match fairly, then everything is over, so we have to assume Ionia will win. That being said, here's the plan.